Hi, Phil. Thank you for being back on my channel.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Thanks,
It
Christian.
was, gotta say, our last video was a success. It was one of the longest one I've made, but I think every time I have you at my disposal, I can't stop talking. But I'll do my very best today. So we have a set agenda. The agenda we have today is to talk about whether or not screening designs are still relevant in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a short answer for me?
Yes, they are.
They are. All right. I was going for no, but
Okay.
let's let's. You'll probably win this discussion, but let's keep at it. I mean, screening designs and design of experiment is not particularly a new thing.
Right. Well, so Fisher, who's kind of the father of DOE, if you like, he started publishing about DOE in, I think, 26, published something. His most famous book was 1935, I think. And then his colleague, so they were both working at Rothamsted Agricultural Station near Luton Airport in the UK. His colleague Yates, I think he was the guy that came up with the idea of fractional factorial designs. And that's what, if you've been taught DOE classically, then you will have learned about fractional factorial designs, particularly as screening designs. It's a fraction of the full factorial. So the full factorial, right, if you've got 3 factors at 2 levels, the full factorial is 8 runs.
Yeah.
So it's 2 to the power of 3, the number of levels to the power of the number of factors. The half factorial would be 4 runs. So you take your 8 combinations, your 8 runs, and you just run half of those. So that's the half factorial. You can get down to lower orders of factorials as well. So if you've got more factors, then the half factorial might still be quite a big design. So you can go down to lower numbers.
And the idea that Yates were getting at is that, well, dear Mr. Fisher, while your fractional factorial are very nice and very they're perfect, really. Like you have the entire thing, right? But what he's like, you don't need that. Like you could actually do with less, getting to the same conclusions. And
yeah,
you at least I like to do less. Like if I can get away with doing less, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of instinctively lazy. There's no point in doing things just for the sake of it. And I think a full factorial, in many cases, there's a lot of redundancy there. You don't need to run all of the possible combinations. You can just run a fraction of them, and that's what Yates was getting at with the fractional factorial designs.
So if we fast forward, SAS starts to get interested in DOE, and they make the custom designs.
Right.
And let's not put a lot of words on that, but the idea here was to have the computer figure out what design fits your problem the best.
Yeah, exactly. So with personal computing, you don't need to just follow these textbook designs. You know, those textbook designs are easy to implement, you know, with pen and paper methods. They're easy to analyze. Once you've got computing, you don't need to just stick to those. You can ask the computer to design the best experiment. It doesn't need to be that rigid kind of structure, and you can analyze it really easily. So you don't need to worry about whether it's going to be simple to analyze, because the computer again does that for you.
Yeah. So like some of the old designs were made because you knew I have to calculate this later with this. Like
exactly. Yeah.
Again, I gotta understand both parts right away. Where with computational power, things that you would be absolutely horrible to do by hand is done by like just crunching the numbers.
Yeah.
Maybe we should call it computerized design of experiment. No, that's not a good name. All right.
Yeah, I think custom design or optimal design is a nice term, because it's talking about what the design does for you. So
yeah,
the idea is you can customize. Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. Then the last thing, definitive screening, comes along, which is
Right.
a really nice design, but also kind of rigid. Like it only fits if it fits your problem, awesome, do that. If not, go custom. That's kind of
Yeah. So there's this irony that definitive screening designs are a textbook design. And Brad Jones, who was one of the people that discovered definitive screening designs, had spent his career telling people not to use textbook designs and that optimal custom designs is the way forward. They do have these uniquely nice properties, though. That's the thing. Yeah, he discovered that actually you can get these designs where they're on 3 levels. So you're not just constrained to looking at simple linear effects. You can estimate some curvature because they're on 3 levels. And they've got a really nice correlation structure as well.
Okay. I think it's time to actually look at it.
Yeah, I think you kind of need to look at it to understand this correlation structure and what's so good about it.
I have Jump open, and I'm going to make 2 designs, and you can tell me what you think about them. We're going to go to the total classic 2-level screening.
Yep.
Say I have 8 factors. Let's just do 7. 7 factors, continuous factors, to make it simple.
Yep.
I will choose construct a main effects design. And I can do that with 8 runs. Boom. 7 factors, 8 runs. What's not to like?
Okay.
Well, we can open this design evaluation, and this is where I think that we already discussed the power analysis. I think I'll give a link to people who want to have that talk. But it's really this one that interests me. When we look at this and we make the classical screening, we get some of these really red dots, meaning that we have confoundations between main effects and interactions. So the way that I understand this, correct me if I'm wrong, is that if we have a really strong interaction between any factor and another, let's say that x2 comes out to be significant in our design, we wouldn't know whether that was actually x2 or it was the interaction between x1 and x5, or the interaction between x2 and x. No, that was not the same. x3 and x4, or x5 and x7.
Yeah.
So there's actually it's x2 or it's one of these 3 other things. Like we can't separate them in our analytics, and that's why I say, well, don't do this kind of screening.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a compromise, basically, and the compromise here, as you say, is that we can't separately estimate these things. All 4 of those things, you could have that main effect and those 3 interactions could all be active, and we've just absolutely no way of separating out what is really going on between those. The best we can do is just assume that it's that main effect, and then proceed as though it were that main effect that's active. But that doesn't feel very. I'm not very comfortable with that kind of process, personally.
And then if you were to do this design as a definitive screening, using the definitive screening, the same 7 continuous factors.
Yeah.
It's going to be, let's be cheap and set extra runs to 0.
Yeah.
It's going to tell us to do 17. And while 17 is significantly more than 8, I'm going to be agreeing with that. Like we can look at, you gain a few benefits here. Like you can actually determine curvature.
Yeah.
You can determine interactions, because if we take a look at this correlation structure, we have none of those really red dots that we had before. We have only correlations that we can deal with. Like we have one here at 66, which is okay. I think I always said they limit at 0.8.
Yeah, and if you notice, the really important thing, the really good thing is that at the top, you've just got that massive sea of blue.
Yeah.
Which means that your main effects are completely uncorrelated with the second order effects, the 2-way interactions.
Yeah. And
that's where the name definitive screening comes from. So the original paper was said that it's a class of 3-level designs for definitive screening in the presence of higher order effects. So the claim that you're making basically is that there is zero correlation. The main effects can be estimated completely clear of any of the higher order effects.
Yeah.
But you can also estimate some of these higher order effects and some of the quadratic effects included in that, if they're sufficiently strong. So sometimes, while this is primarily a screening design, it's about trying to find out which factors are active and which ones are less important. It might give you all you need. It might give you the full response surface model for the active factors so that you can, it tells you everything you need.
So thanks for that explanation. I think that's really helpful. And as we said multiple times, like it's a compromise. Like if you wanna be cheap, or if you're constrained, let's say, put it in a nice way, if 8 runs is all you got because of some limitations, and you really do have 7 factors, doing the classical screening, although it's not optimal, you're better off than anything other thing you could come up with. Like, it's a good use of your time.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say it's not optimal. In actual fact, it is optimal. So we talked about custom or optimal designs and classical designs. Actually, classical designs are optimal given a certain definition. So if you ask Jump for the optimal design to look at main effects in 8 runs, if you ask for a de-optimal design, you would get that same design as you would get from a classical textbook, which is the fractional factorial. So
even using the fancy custom designer, it will link you to that good old screening design if that's what you need.
Yeah, I mean, they are in for a given number of runs, the fractional factorials are actually optimal designs. So which is nice. I mean, you don't need to be scared of optimal designs because they will give you the same thing as your classical designs under the right circumstances. If you can afford 11 runs, and it's 11 exactly, then there isn't a classical design there. So you would be definitely going for an optimal design, and it would be something a little bit different.
Yeah. Let's see how the people are commenting. Let's see where we could take it next. It was always a great pleasure to talk with you, Phil. And I don't think I can manage to make these videos short. But hey, they can just not watch it.
Love it. Yeah, thanks, Christian.
Thank you.